Look, if we give our money to WWE, we only have ourselves to blame for being presented with whatever strangeness their demented souls can dream up for what should be some of their biggest and best shows. Because while pay-per-view might historically be the place to see whatever marquee matches WWE have to offer, they've also been unafraid to reward paying punters with matches that perplex, offend, and in some cases have fans considering asking for refunds when the show's over. And please note that we are excluding strictly so-called cinematic matches, so no Firefly Funhouse, Swamp Fight, etc. Sorry, but also really not sorry. With that being said, I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 strangest WWE pay-per-view matches. Join us!
Andrew, what are you watching there? No, Andrew, seriously, what are you guys watching over there?
Shush, Owen! Stop saying our names, we're trying to protect our identity!
Sam, how are you watching that?
Will you stop dropping us in it? They don't know where we're from.
You can't get that in the UK. Are we going to get a knock at the door?
No, no, no! We're using NordVPN!
Wow, so cool. That's radical, dude. Wow. So naughty.
If you imagine the internet like the wrestling industry, NordVPN is like a giant digital lucha mask that keeps your identity hidden online, keeps all your private information like banking and passwords safe from those dastardly dirt sheets, and it leaves no digital footprint behind. So basically, if you're looking for a lightning-fast tag team partner in these trying times, NordVPN has got your back. Not only does it look out for your data and safety, it also lets you shift your virtual location with one click to access content and streaming services exclusive to other regions, often saving you a ton of money in the process. Did somebody say cheaper PLEs? One account can be used on up to 10 devices, so no matter what you're using, Nord's gonna be there waiting for the hot tag.
Ugh. And if you're the type who likes to live the gimmick, this can mean things like cheaper flights, hotels, and experiences. Dig it! The numbers don't lie. Cultaholic truly believes Nord to be the best VPN out there, and if you try it and don't agree, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. To get the best discount on your NordVPN plan, head to nordvpn.com/cultaholic. Not only will it get you a hefty discount, but you'll also get 4 free months off the 2-year plan. The link is in the description below. Thanks for your time, and a huge thanks to Nord for sponsoring today's video.
Cheers, lads. That's some proper good mucho content, ain't that?
Number 10, Big Show vs. Akebono at WrestleMania 21. WrestleMania has always been as much about spectacle as it is about quality in-ring action. The lure of the attraction, whether that be a novel stipulation or an appearance by a special celebrity, has been a major theme at the showcase of the Immortals over the decades. A sumo match featuring Akebono was neither a great stipulation, nor did it feature a special celebrity. Granted, Akebono may have been a genuine sumo great, being the first foreigner to achieve the rank of Yokozuna, and he'd made a name for himself in Japan. But to 99.9% of the WWE audience, he wasn't that much of a big deal at all. The brainchild of John Laurinaitis, which explains a lot, the sumo match was the undoubted low point of a generally excellent show, for giving us the visual of Big Show wearing the world's largest thong, if nothing else. An obviously worked match that ended when Akebono threw Show out of the ropeless ring. This did absolutely nothing for Show, Akebono, or the fans who no doubt paid big money for ringside seats, only to be met with the sight of the Big Show in a thong. Number 9, the Hart family vs. Shawn Michaels and the Knights at Survivor Series 1993. The 1993 Survivor Series was supposed to see the continuation, if not culmination, of the feud between Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler. But the King found himself in a bit of, legal trouble and was taken off the show. Replaced by the irrepressible Shawn Michaels, one would assume the reshuffled match would be better, right? Well, it really wasn't. I mean, it was technically fine and everything, but it was way too long, and it was also difficult to overcome the sheer oddness of it all. First, the Heartbreak Kid is just dropped in there as Lawler's avatar, having to team with 3 masked knights, played by Greg Valentine, Jeff Gaylord, and Barry Horowitz, no less, so there's not that much heat, as the whole angle was built towards Stu and Helen's kids seeking revenge on Lawler. Then there's the weirdness of seeing Keith and Bruce Hart wrestling in a WWE ring for the only time ever. On top of that, have I mentioned what Brett was wearing? Look, I'm certainly not against the idea of the Hitman showing a bit of leg and keeping things consistent with his brothers, but I'm sure I wasn't the only one who felt a bit like a pervert after staring at Brett's shiny thighs for 30 minutes. You guys were all staring too, right? Right? Number 8, John Cena versus John Laurinaitis at Over the Limit 2012. With a dearth of credible, fresh, or otherwise healthy opponents for John Cena to take on in May of 2012, WWE did the smart thing and threw one of their top executives to the wolves. To be fair, Talent Relations VP John Laurinaitis had been a pretty handy worker for All Japan back in the 90s, but he hadn't wrestled in over a decade when he met Big Match John in the main event. Yes, the main event of his first and last WWE pay-per-view. The match, if you even want to call it that, revolved around Cena finding new ways to beat up and humiliate the artist formerly known as Johnny Ace. Now, I'm all for the big babyface giving the dastardly heel his comeuppance, but this was 15 minutes of WWE's supposed hero being a bully and taking things way too far as the announce team lapped it up from ringside. Be a star indeed, John. To cap, or should that be crap, everything off, Big Show waddled in for the utterly predictable finish, turning on Cena to hand Laurinaitis the hollow victory. At least Show wasn't wearing a thong in this one. Number 7, Tyson Tomko versus Stevie Richards at Unforgiven 2004. Sorry for ruining the surprise right out of the gate, but as much as WWE tried to tell us for almost 2 months that the mystery woman keeping watch over Victoria was a mysterious woman, everyone knew from the get-go that it was Stevie Richards in very unconvincing drag. Having drifted from Victoria after she'd turned babyface, Richards' attempt to remain in her life via the most lamentable of storylines, which culminated painfully at Unforgiven 2004 when the supposed mystery woman emerged to save Victoria from Tyson Tomko after she'd lost to women's champion Trish Stratus. Tomko didn't take too kindly to the interference and opted to call Stevie some not too nice names before beating the hell out of him for 6 uncomfortable minutes. Seriously, this unadvertised match was no bonus for the paying audience, but more akin to a televised hate crime that played before a silent crowd and an indifferent announce team. Richards finally mounted a comeback with the dreaded testicle claw, but stopped to pick up his bra, and, well, you can't be doing a thing like that, can you? I can't be doing with any of this, to be honest, so let's move on! Number 6, Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt at Payback 2017. Oh boy, I'm so glad we moved on. Right, so Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt had several utterly bonkers pay-per-view matches over the years, from the Bugs on Canvas bout at WrestleMania 33 to the balmy Firefly Inferno match at TLC 2020 and beyond. Weave went for the House of Horrors match from Payback 2017, as though it featured a cinematic portion, it wasn't a fully cinematic outing. But it was completely mental, starting with a shirtless Randy showing up at the Wyatt family house in a limo, having already burned down one of their houses, remember, as I presume he couldn't get an Uber to where the backwoods dwellers resided. The Viper walked around the spooky digs as Bray did some lame horror movie scares before attacking Orton and dumping a fridge on him. A fridge? Alright, now I'm really scared. The Eater of Worlds then turned on some red lighting and took the limo back to the arena, where fans were booing the hell out of the nonsense they just witnessed. Later on, the match started proper, as Randy gained the advantage only for interference by Jinder Mahal and the Bollywood Boys to leave him prone to Sister Abigail. And with that, let us never speak of this again. Number 5, Batista versus the Coach at Taboo Tuesday 2005. Taboo Tuesday 2005 was set to be the first Stone Cold Steve Austin match in 18 months, the Texas Rattlesnake due to come out of retirement for what he must have assumed would have been the one-sided ass-whooping of the Coach. Incredibly, WWE actually wanted Austin to do the job here, which Stone Cold rightfully balked at and pulled out of the match citing a back injury. In a bind, WWE drafted in World Heavyweight Champion Batista to take his place. The match, as you might have guessed by now, was far from a classic. Fans naturally voted for the street fight stipulation ahead of an arm wrestling contest or a verbal debate, which allowed Goldust and a totally past it Vader to get involved in what was essentially a 3-on-1 handicap match. The heels beat up the animal for a bit before he made the predictable babyface comeback and finished Coach off with a Batista bomb. Yes, with Austin out of the equation and the if he wins Jim Ross gets his job back caveat dropped, WWE were happy for their world champion to go over on the announcer. How nice of them. Number 4, Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins at the horror show at Extreme Rules. It feels almost like a cheat to include anything from the pandemic era, as WWE had, like the rest of the world, completely lost their minds. How else do you explain the decision to book Rey Mysterio against Seth Rollins in an eye-for-an-eye match? Come to think of it, how else do you explain the decision to name the pay-per-view The Horror Show at Extreme Rules? Both Rey and Seth had attempted to remove the other one's eye during their bitter dispute, with Mysterio picking the stip for their match that the only way to win was to perform a spot of in-ring ocular surgery, or an extraction as the PG-friendly announcers tried to get over. With two great workers, you'd expect they would at least have a great match, and they did. But the stupidity of the stipulation undid most of the goodwill they built up before the intelligence-insulting finish, complete with Z-movie special effects, finished off the job. Rollins fake vomiting all over the ringside mat after performing the extraction sure did provide a nice visual metaphor to sum this nonsense up, mind. Number 3, Pat Patterson versus Gerald Briscoe at King of the Ring 2000. The antics surrounding the Hardcore Championship was one of the surprising highlights of WWE in 2000. The Hardcore evening gown match between the Stooges Patterson and Briscoe at the King of the Ring pay-per-view, however, was one of the unsurprising lowlights. The whole thing came about due to a storyline where Briscoe won the Hardcore title, only for Patterson to betray him by taking advantage of the 24/7 rule. In order to hide from those gunning for the ramshackle strap, Pat did the thing we would all do in that situation. He dragged up and hid in the women's locker room. When Briscoe got wise to the ruse, he too started dressing up in women's clothes and, well, here we are. Clearly booked for the amusement of a very small circle of people backstage, the match saw the two Hall of Famers doing supposed comedy spots involving a banana, a sanitary pad, and moves like the Bronco Buster. A teased stinkface, however, thankfully never materialized. With the crowd completely turning on this dreck, my hero and yours, Crash Holly, ran down to put it out of its misery. Someone ought to have done the same to whoever had the idea for this bizarre match. Number 2, Al Snow versus the Big Boss Man at Unforgiven 1999. There are heels, and there are heels that will cook your pet dog and feed it back to you. Big Boss Man fell into the latter category in 1999, a year which was decidedly on one. Having killed Al Snow's Chihuahua Pepper before serving the pooch to the Hardcore Champion. Such a dastardly act called for a grudge match in a special setting, which gave the world the first, and thankfully only, Kennel from Hell match. The Kennel from Hell saw the regular Hell in a Cell lowered with the blue bar steel cage erected inside of it. In the ringside area, between the two cages, vicious Rottweilers would roam back and forth, ready and willing to attack anyone who mistakenly found themselves in their territory. Well, that was the idea anyway. But it turns out the hounds weren't quite so well trained, and they spent most of their time peeing, defecating, and trying to hump each other rather than snarl and bite. Making the match even more awkward were the escape rules, because there's nothing like running away from your hated rival to settle a score, is there? A rotten idea, poorly executed, good old JR felt the need to apologize to fans on commentary once it had come to a merciful end. I don't accept it, Jim, but I appreciate the sentiment. And number 1, The Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys at Great American Bash 2004. With no major credible heels for him to feud with at the time, The Undertaker started a program with Paul Heyman, who stole the fabled urn and recruited the Dudley Boys to kidnap Paul Bearer after the dead man refused an offer to join his stable. This led to the infamous concrete Crypt match at the 2004 Great American Bash, with Taker battling Bubba Ray and Devon in a handicap match with a twist. The twist was that Heyman had imprisoned Bearer in a box that he would fill with cement should Taker not do the right thing and lay down for the duds. And I sure do love a great twist. After initially feigning compliance, the Phenom fought the Dudleys as Heyman incrementally released more and more of the wet stuff. In the end, Devon was finished off with a tombstone, but before Paulie could carry out his murderous plot, Undertaker used his spooky powers to make a lightning bolt hit the cement truck, scaring Heyman off. Whew, that was a close one, wasn't it? Good thing Taker was there to save... Wait, Mark, he's pulled the lever himself. Poor Bear is dead. Well, thanks for ordering the pay-per-view, everyone. Good night.